I am going to very briefly share our agenda and what the purpose and goals for today are, and then get us quickly into a panel, and then we're going to do some breakout groups. But today's conversation, I know last time everybody spent a lot of time hearing from some panels, and there wasn't as much time to engage as a group. Today, we're going to switch that up a bit. We'll do some quick welcomes, and then we're going to go into a panel. We've got a half a dozen folks who are involved with a variety of very different programs at the school and school system level. And what we wanted to do was put the spotlight on some different approaches that schools, school systems, and communities are taking to bridge the gap at times between the schools and the communities, to make sure that kids have a safe place and to serve kids' overall well-being, both on the mental and the physical safety side of it. So we're going to hear from that group for about half an hour. Then we're going to go out into some breakout groups to reflect on what we heard and to really drill into what was highlighted there, or what are some other programs that everybody knows about that might be models that could be replicated in additional schools, school systems, communities, and to talk a little bit about what types of resources might be needed, whether that's funding, different partnerships, or technical assistance and things. For those of you who have been part of the different convenings that this combined team has facilitated, this is kind of our standard approach. We bring together really smart people to let you tell us what's needed, and then we go out and do things like find the funding to pilot some programs. During COVID, we brought together the Ed System Resilience Initiative, and we're able to bring, I think it was close to $100,000 to support some pilots and test programs at the local level. That also then translated into legislation that appropriated, in one of those rare instances of unanimous bipartisan effort at the Joint Budget Committee, over $13 million to support the ideas. So today's goal is to hear from some of these programs that are happening, brainstorm what that inspires or informs could happen in more schools and school systems. And then we want to tease that out into a list of ideas that we might be able to support in the forms of pilots or scaling or growing different programs in different schools. And as Sue reminds, that was not just 13 million one time. That's an annual appropriation to continue to provide continued support. And I don't want to promise today that we're going to be able to deliver that same number. I just raised that because that's the model we take, is listening to all of you and then leveraging your smart thinking to work with the state and our federal friends. We had a conversation with Congresswoman Pedersen's office last week, and the first thing they wanted to know is, what can we do to support the work of this group? So I'll get us real quickly into the panel. You've seen this next slide a handful of times. It's just our norms. And the bottom line is we ask everybody to engage, to listen, to be respectful of what you're hearing, to disagree without being disagreeable. And I'm going to call out the bottom one, the facilitation, only because we have so many people, so many thoughts. Your facilitators, at times when we're in our breakout groups, are going to need to move that conversation along. So we appreciate everybody being truly engaged in the conversation and participating, but also understanding that if we move the conversation along, it's not out of disrespect. It's actually out of a deep respect for everybody to move the conversations along. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing screen. I'm going to invite Jamita and Evan on, and then I'll put up a slide with the panelists. But Jamita and Evan, do you want to tee up what it is we're going to be talking about and how you guys have approached this?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, thank you everyone for being here. As Barrick introduced me, my name is Jamita. I am the Director of Policy at Public Education and Business Coalition, also known as PEBC. And we're really excited to get into this panel and to really talk about the different school and community partnerships throughout Colorado. So you're going to hear from people who are on the school side, you're going to hear from people in the community, and really, just to echo what Barrick is saying, really think about what is successful about what you're hearing, and then what are some things that could possibly be relevant to your context, what might you change? And also, just to give you some lay of the land, this panel is going to be about 30 minutes. As Barrick said, all of our panelists will be spotlighted. So please ensure that you're muted at this time so that you're able to hear the words of our lovely panelists. If you do have questions, Evan is going to put a Jamboard in the chat for you to direct your questions there. We will have a Q&A portion at the end. So we will make sure that we'll be able to get to as many questions as possible. And as Barrick said, there might be moments where you notice that I come off mute for panelists, and panelists, I just sent you a message. So please just keep your chat up. We're just trying to be very conscious of time because we know that you all have really, really wonderful things to share. And we also want to make sure that we have enough time for the breakout rooms in the end. So Carrie or Barrick, once you're ready, you can start spotlighting our panelists and we will get into introductions.
Absolutely. And while that's coming up, I'm also just going to put a list of our panelists on the screen as Carrie gets everybody highlighted, and we'll hand it back to you and take that off screen.
Thank you. All right. Do we have everyone spotlighted? Okay, we have Andrea. Wonderful. Hi, Laura. Hi, Andrea. Hi, Kaycee. And so for the introduction, what we'll ask you all to do is to just say your name, your role in the school or organization that you are with. And then in about a minute or less, just tell us a bit about your context and describe what community partnerships or collaborations look like for you. Evan, if you could put that question in the chat for them and for the audience, just so that they know what they're answering. Why don't we start with you, Kaycee?
Wonderful. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kaycee Headricks. I get to serve as the executive director for the Boys and Girls Clubs in Colorado. So Boys and Girls Clubs are out of school youth development programs across the state. What makes this probably most unique is our ability to offer a very low cost or no cost model. So we serve as one of the largest and most comprehensive out of school programs across the state of Colorado. In the context of this, we are interested in and participate in local school districts and communities around building protective factors for young people and really being a safe and positive place for young people. And so a lot of what we'll talk about today, and I'm excited to share with you, is just some of the ways that partnerships have enabled us to do that in a really robust and comprehensive way. So thanks again for letting me participate in this panel.
Of course. Laura, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey, my name is Laura Haller, and I'm in my 11th year of teaching. I'm a special education teacher, so I teach anywhere from kindergarten through 5th at Rocky Mountain Prep, which is a charter school in DPS.
Thank you, Laura. Andrea, can you introduce yourself? Uh-oh, Anna, Andrea, we can't hear you.
Nothing?
Wait, now we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, I told you my microphone is sometimes wonky. But good morning. My name is Andrea Nieto, and I work at a mobile micro middle school called La Luz. We're based out of Southwest Denver. And basically, we believe in returning learning back to the community. So we spend 6 weeks at different locations. So we do 6 weeks at the Denver Zoo and 6 weeks at History, Colorado. And yeah, I'm excited to chat with y'all.
Wonderful, thank you. And Kristen, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen, and I am the partnerships coordinator for the Colorado Youth Congress. The Colorado Youth Congress is an organization that works with approximately 50 high school students across the state of Colorado. And what partnerships look like for us is we partner with a variety of advocacy organizations across the state about issues that our youth members are passionate about. And we also partner with a variety of culturally affirming healthcare providers across the state who also support our students in mental health.
Wonderful, thank you. And Anna, can you introduce yourself as well?
Yes, of course. My name is Ana Chavira, and I was currently a Spanish lead teacher at Roaring Fork Schools, and I've been a teacher for 8 years.
Wonderful. So when you think about community partnerships, can you all give us an idea of what they look like given your context? Why don't we start with Andrea? I know you mentioned the partnerships that you have at the museum. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so every 6 weeks, we call them studios. We basically partner with a different organization and spend about 90% of our day in their space and having our own classroom there. So our first one that we're going to be starting with after we do just 4 weeks of hiking is the Denver Zoo. Last year we got to work with them studying bison and buffalo, and our students got to go out to where they have an original herd from Yellowstone and work with them studying the bison and buffalo, as well as at the zoo itself, we have our own classroom there. So every day we're there, we have our own space that we get to go to and engage with experts in different learning opportunities, always culminating in some sort of project or something that they get to bring back and share with the community and invite families in to come be a part of that as well. So that's just like one example. But throughout the year, we go to different spaces. And each day it's about 90% of our time out in the community of Denver, just learning.
Wow, that sounds pretty incredible. Can you tell us about the impact that has had on your students?
Yeah, so this is my second year at La Luz, and we've been around for 3 years. And it's pretty amazing to see like a school where kids don't have to sit in desks and chairs all day long. I like hated that even myself as a teacher. And I've just been able to see my kids like grow and learn and like dive into different passions so much more easily. And also the opportunity to meet experts, like even me as an adult, this is, I think for me, like such a cool experience. Like sometimes I feel like I'm learning as much as the kids because of all the amazing people we get to interact with. I mean, last year during our unit History of Colorado, we went to the opening of the legislature and our students got to go find and meet their senators, just things that I never have had the opportunity to do that I really see. I do see the impact and it's quite large on my students.
Thank you. Laura, what about you?
Yeah, I think we do a lot of like proactive stuff for kiddos, like partnering with organizations that can support like extracurricular activities. So one of our big partnerships is with Revision. So they help us in our school garden. They've done a lot of really cool like nutrition classes. They made like beet tortillas. They were like red and so cool, and like teaching families alongside kids and like being able to build some of those like relationships and opportunities for like community building for individual families, but also for like our school as a whole. And then we also do like bring in a lot of programming for our like weekly celebrations. We call them peak parties. And so we like to bring in different organizations that like do performances or like share different knowledge and programming. So I think those are like kind of the proactive things that we try and do. We also worked with Stand for Children around literacy, and they did some parent programming to help families understand like where their student was, how to interact with their teacher. And then eventually the program started to teach families not only how to work with their own kid at home, but then how to advocate like at a district level. I think like the impact has really been parent advocacy. We've seen families go from that program to become Stand Fellows and like go to DPS board meetings or go to different other policy things at the Capitol and advocate not just for their students, but for all students in their community. But I think also it's just been like a really positive way for families and communities to connect. I think like relationship is such a huge piece of safety and like belonging. And then I think we also do a lot of support in terms of like when kiddos are in crisis and need support. We have like worked with Denver Children's Home to bring parenting and like coaching into families' homes when we can't do that for them. We've worked with Judy's House when families have lost family members, the DPS homeless department, and then we have our own like we call it a fast team. So like if families are struggling with bills or whatever, we buy their groceries for the week so that kind of we can offset their costs to be able to like make sure they can meet those needs. So those are some of the pieces that we've done.
That's really great. Thank you, Laura, for sharing. What about you, Kristen? We just heard a little bit on the school side. Can you tell us about your community partnerships and what they look like and the impact?
Yeah, so I would say this is a two-part question. First and foremost, the Colorado Youth Congress grounds its work in a culture of care. Our most important priority is our students and their well-being. We value relationship building and getting to know our students beyond the work we do at CYC. And so, as I mentioned, we do partner with a variety of culturally affirming mental health care providers who support our students' growth and development. More specifically, last year, one of our students came out as gay at our retreat, and they hadn't yet told their family. we connected them to a queer therapist that shared the same racial identity. And the therapist was then able to help them process their experience, as well as coach them through coming out to their family. Additionally, CYC provides an annual wellness fund in which our students can access to pursue therapy or any other supports that boost their mental health and wellness. The second part is CYC also addresses safety through our programming that fosters youth leadership. Last year, CYC experienced a loss due to gun violence. Our members wanted to express their leadership in a way that would confront the issue of gun violence and initiated a student-led campaign with Colorado Ceasefire, which is an organization that strives to prevent and reduce gun violence in the state of Colorado. I would say by partnering with advocacy organizations across the state, we provide our students a chance to influence decision-making and advance policies grounded in youth voice and experience.
Thank you, Kristen. Kaycee, can you also share?
Yes, thanks so much. So when we think about partnerships across the state through a Boys and Girls Club lens, there's 2 points that I really wanted to drive home today. The first one is that we create partnerships with school districts. And then the second one is that we create partnerships that are really embedded on the community side of things that usually include school districts as well. In both instances, these partnerships are curated for the youth and the community's unique needs. So a couple examples of that: in Pueblo this summer, the city talked about really wanting to have a program for teens that, especially Friday nights, Saturday nights, there wasn't a lot of opportunities for teens to have something fun to do, positive to do. And they asked the Boys and Girls Clubs if the Boys and Girls Club would be interested in setting something like that up. And so they were able to do that through a partnership with both the city and the rec center. The Boys and Girls Clubs have been hosting teen nights on Friday and Saturday nights in Pueblo to help give young people a place to go. Now, those places to go, or that program, is embedded with those social and emotional supports, with really robust recreation and workforce development programs for teens to have that opportunity to both connect with each other, but also to explore what maybe some future careers could be. On the other side, when we look at school districts, we try to partner in a really robust and comprehensive way. And so what we mean by that is we want to give school districts the services and the specifically wraparound services that their students might need. So for example, that might be in certain districts Friday programming because it's a 4-day school week. It might be programming that is more focused on reading or more focused on mathematics to help students who maybe have fallen behind in some of those subject areas. And so our partnerships, or our philosophy around partnerships, is really about identifying what is the need in the community or in the unique school district and curating a Boys and Girls Club out of school experience to really hit those major points.
I'm hearing a theme of community focus, making sure that it's what the community needs, building trust and a lot of care from all of you. And so, Anna, I'm wondering, in your context, what does community partnerships look like for you, and what impact have you seen?
The community partnerships that I have seen very much echo what Laura had said about family partnerships, engaging parents in their children's education and partnering with community colleges and nonprofits to help parents continue their education. And also these are parents that are culturally and linguistic diverse. So providing the adequate support and tools for them to learn the language and also learn the education system here in the States, because it very much differs from what they had experienced in their home country.
So Anna, Laura, and Andrea, I'm going to direct this question at you. How have you seen these community partnerships really impact the community or the families that you work with and serve?
If that's okay. One of the ways I've seen it impact the community is actually impacting the partnerships as well. So we try to make it not just like a one-sided of like, we get a lot from these partners, but what are we giving back? But also teaching a lot of the community partners like at the Denver Zoo or History of Colorado, or when we were at CSU Spur, like different models of teaching. So as opposed to like the sit and get, or like when you go to the zoo and you're doing a field trip, it's like, I'm going to walk you around and tell you something, but more of like the hands-on experiential, how can they bring that to other schools and other classrooms? And also how can they partner more with other schools and classrooms? So I know this summer, the Denver Zoo had, for I think one of the first times, they had some new teacher professional development that they rolled out. And they said like a lot of what their learnings that they shared were things that they learned like working with our students for 6 weeks. It's not often that partners get like that amount of time with a classroom or a school. Like usually they just get like a one-off field trip. So it's also been a lot of learning for our partners as well as like for ourselves and for our students.
Yeah, I think the impact is often that those families that like go to those activities and those extracurriculars are often more engaged in the school context. And so that means then they have relationships from teachers from those events. And then suddenly that teacher becomes their kiddo's teacher next year. And that those conferences are more like robust and they can actually have real conversations, which I think leads to parents actually knowing where their kids are at. And when we're talking about like a state in a country where like kids are not reading and doing math on grade level, like real conversations and conferences and the ability to text your teacher or call your teacher when something comes up matters so much. And I think for the families that aren't coming to those, they're missing out on some of those key moments. And I think that's like a really big barrier that is a hard thing to work through sometimes. And so I think just that the impact of like family engagement in a kiddo's education is like the biggest thing. I also think like from a kid perspective, I like teach special education. So I don't have my own classroom and kids are coming up to me in the hallway who I don't even teach. They're like, when's the next garden day? When's the next garden day? And so I think those connections where kids can really engage with other adults that they feel safe with and like just create those relationships matter so much to like a sense of belonging, which then I think supports like safety overall.
I very much echo what Laura said, and I see it in the classroom in a sense of academic engagement and boosting academic success. I also see a more robust conversation with student and parent-teacher conferences. Families also, these families that participate in this engagement also become advocates for school policies, schools changes. I see them participate in board meetings. So the engagement just grows and grows year to year with these families.
Thank you. And so I'm hearing conversations about families being engaged, it really having an impact and really empowering them to advocate for what's best for their community. And so I'm already starting to hear a sense of some barriers that you all are sensing. And so considering what barriers you already know are in place, and also thinking about what could be, what resources would it take to really build those school and community partnerships in your context. And I'm looking at you, Kristen, because I'm thinking about the youth leadership that you all are doing across the state.
Yeah, thanks for asking this question. So Colorado Youth Congress is actually in the process of building an infrastructure to connect students across the state to leadership opportunities that ensure young people are central to the decision-making in Colorado. There are approximately 900,000 K-12 students in Colorado, and we mostly rely on schools and sometimes sports and extracurriculars to make students feel a part of a bigger whole. However, students are not connected to across schools, and adults are not connected to students who are directly experiencing some of these issues. The Youth Leadership Network that we're creating strives to connect the right people to one another, and we trust that this connection will lead to greater levels of safety through the creation of authentic, successful youth-adult partnerships.
Wonderful, thank you. And I just put the link that you sent me about the Youth Leadership Network, Kristen. Kaycee, I'm gonna go to you. What do you think would be helpful resources for the Boys and Girls Club?
Yeah, when we think about really creating comprehensive safe spaces for young people, we've seen the most success when those partnerships are really embedded. And what we mean by that is if you have a Boys and Girls Club or like organization in a school, for example, that is seen as comprehensive, it's seen as a comprehensive partner for the school. So that means that if a young person has maybe a challenging day at school, the after school staff knows that that's going on and can help to tailor that day for that student and communicate it appropriately to the parent. And then from that, then that staff member can then go back to the teacher the following day and update them on what's going on. And all of a sudden there starts to be this care coordination, and we stop the bifurcation of what's happening during the school day and what's happening in the out of school space. And it becomes this really comprehensive model. Those are the schools and those are the partnerships that we have seen the most success in when we look at healthy outcomes for young people. And so we measure that through youth voice. So we have young people telling us that they feel really supported in those environments and that they feel connected to their peers and staff members and teachers and to the programs and content that are being offered. And it just helps to create a much more robust working relationship with both the school, but it is that continuity of care that young people and their parents alike get. And so I would just offer that in terms of resources needed, I think we need to think about the coordination of school and out of school in a healthier way, or in a more partnership, sitting at the table together way. And that does require resources in terms of just like maybe reconditioning that that previous relationship, or the way that we've set up normal standards for that. Sometimes it's very like, oh, it's out of school, so then this is this person's, area. But if we aren't talking, then I don't know that students always get the most comprehensive support that they could. And so I would just say that that's a really important resource outside of course, some funding to help to support out of school programs alike.
Thank you. I saw a lot of nodding coming from the rest of the panel. Laura, I'll start with you. What would you like to add to what Kaycee just said?
Yeah, I mean, I loved what you said. I think there's so much on a teacher's plate, which I think is actually a really big barrier to all of this. Like, schools are supposed to be like creating these whole beautiful people, and their primary job is also to teach them how to read and write and like do math at the level that gives them the freedom to do whatever they choose in their life, right? And so, but I think right now what schools are dealing with is that kids aren't well, they're not safe, they're in crisis, especially post-pandemic, but certainly pre-pandemic. And so I think kiddos are in classrooms where there's a lot going on, there's a lot of behaviors going on. And the reality is we don't have enough mental health professionals in schools. And if you're not in an education context too, I think the thing that you maybe don't understand too is a student on an IEP who maybe has ADHD or autism might get 90 minutes a month with a mental health provider, a social worker, or a psychologist. That time though, the purpose of that time is not to provide therapy, which a lot of these students need, right? And probably all of us as humans need, but that time is meant to give them skills to access their educational environment. So that looks like working with a kiddo with executive functioning needs on how to organize, right? That's social skills for a kiddo with autism and like how to better interact and build relationships. Those are all important. And alongside all of that, there are kids that are just having really difficult times in school. Not to mention that there's 30 some kids in a classroom often. And so I think a couple things. One, we need more mental health providers and nonprofits to actually be serving kids in the school building and the money to do that. Those mental health providers are often provided through the budget of special education, and that's their primary job, not therapy. And I think another big thing is like smaller class sizes. I think when you can feel more connected to the kids in your room and the teacher in your room, I think that makes a big difference. And with teachers leaving education at the rate that they're doing, that makes it even harder, right? Like there continues to be more and more piled on to teachers. And so I often think about like the kids in the class who are sitting there behaving and like want to learn, but that teacher has to get up and go support another kiddo who's in crisis or who didn't get breakfast and really needs it, or name the thing that happens in a classroom 18 million times a day, you know? And so I think some of those things are really big things that I've been thinking about. And I totally agree that like after school programming and better like alignment there is really important. I would also say when we do have kiddos in crisis that like could be harmful to themselves or others, when we've had real crises and sent them to mental health professionals or to the hospital, we often aren't getting good collaboration and those kids are often just sent home. And so the response just isn't super aligned, kind of to your point too, Kaycee. And so I think there's just like a lot of moving pieces there. Sorry, I'm going to stop taking up so much space, but yeah, lots to think about for that, for sure.
You actually caveat really well, because one of the questions to the panel was thinking about teacher prep programs. And so we know the reality that we're existing in now with the class sizes and the lack of mental health professionals. But as you all reflect on your teacher prep programs, what could have been helpful for you when it comes to building and establishing those community partnerships? Yes, Anna, I'll go to you. Anna?
Oh, sorry, you cut off a little bit for me. I just wanted to piggyback on what Laura had said about the disconnect. Speak to the disconnect between house and schools. For example, like I as a teacher have the resources and knowledge of how to of like trauma-informed pedagogies, neuroscience. So I have the resources to help like regulate a child in crisis mode, but oftentimes parents don't. So then that creates like a disconnect between what these children are experiencing like at home and at schools. And oftentimes also families, one of their most common questions are around trauma-informed practices, what they can do at home, what we do at school, and just providing the right tools and resources to that continuing education piece for parents around social emotional learning, around trauma-informed learning, around just behavioral care at home that a lot of parents and a lot of like culturally diverse parents don't have access to, or there's maybe a taboo around it.
Just a question of curiosity, do you feel like and this is for anyone on the panel, do you feel like you were able to have those strategies, like you knew those strategies when you entered the classroom, or is that something that you were able to build upon in your years in education? And I would also ask the same question to you, Kristen, to you, Kaycee, because you also, I'm sure, use the same strategies.
I became a certified teacher 5 years ago. And so my teacher prep program really was robust around trauma-informed practices. When I got to the classroom, what I found was that there was just a gap between what my teacher prep program had done, because it was so recent, versus what teacher preps had done, 4 years prior, 10 years prior. So then there was a disconnect like between colleagues around practices in the classroom because our teachers prep looked so different. And so what was happening is that those resources and tools were being provided in like PD, but then that was like putting stuff on top of teacher workload for other teachers, and it was just echoing and reiterating what I had already done in teacher prep programs.
Thank you for that. So in our final 4 minutes, that time went by really quickly. I'm going to ask you all just one final question. You are all able to reflect on what has been going really well with your community partnerships, as well as some things that would be great to have in order to improve them. And so I want to leave with the question, what do you hope to be true about your community partnerships for this upcoming school year? I'll give you a moment to think, because I did not put that in the email. And I will let whoever wants to begin.
I'll go ahead and start if that's okay. In terms of what do we hope to be true, I think that we hope that we can have those really robust partnerships consistently. As things get busy and hectic and the world shifts, that we keep and hold very dear the partnership with parents, the partnership with schools, the partnership with community, and this commitment to being really collaborative as it relates to safety and well-being for young people. And I think that we get in response mode, right? Like something happens and we're responding. And when we respond to things, it's really difficult for us too, right? And in doing that, you sometimes forget about, in order to prevent this in the future, or in order to really make sure that that we're doing what's best for the system as a whole, we need to let everybody who works with that young person know, or inform them. And so I hope what's true is that not only do we start with this really amazing platform for robust partnership and collaboration, but we stick to that even when things get a little bit challenging.
Thank you, Kaycee. What about you, Andrea?
Well, I think the word that's coming to mind for me is sustainability. We have some partners who we're returning to for now our third year. And so those are relationships that we've been building upon and iterating and like working with them to make every year better and to figure out what we can do to make it better. And then we have some community partners that will be new this year. So think about how do we sustain those relationships long term for the students and for us to be able to be welcomed back to those spaces and to learn more. And yeah, I think for us, we're a tuition-free independent school. So a lot of that comes back to my awesome boss who hustles every day for grants and funding, because we believe that every student should be able to have this opportunity. Right now we only have 26 kids and we're in Southwest Denver, and most of our students come from that area. But it can be hard to build those partnerships, and knowing like we at this moment, like we don't have a whole lot of money in the bank to make this happen, but we're gonna make it happen. And so I think that's like a big thing for us. But for what I hope to be true, it's just like building upon the foundation we've started year after year, to make those relationships stronger and more consistent, and to like keep having the same places and same people wanting us back. Is like such an honor when they say like, we want to have your students back, we want to have you back for another 6 weeks. Like that feels amazing to hear. So I think just building on that.
Thank you, Andrea. What about you, Kristen?
I would say for me, I hope that our partnerships this year are collaborative. This is the first year that we are trying to partner with 4 organizations consistently throughout the year. As we've noticed in the years past, that when our students were initiating the student-led campaigns, we noticed a lot of burnout within our students. And we're hoping that these partnerships can create pathways for our students to be creative, innovative, as well as have their voices heard, with the adults driving the interaction and providing resources for our students to do so, to kind of alleviate that culture of burnout. And yeah, so collaborative is what I hope to be true for our partnerships.
Thank you, Kristen. What about you, Anna? What do you hope to be true?
What comes to my mind is voice, making sure voices are heard, like teacher voice, student voice, and family voices. We have partnerships that have been in place for a number of years, but just continuing to hear the voices of those that interact in the partnerships, of what's working and what's not.
Thank you so much, Anna. And Laura, you have the final word. What do you hope to be true for your kiddos in your community?
I think really just like a sense of belonging. I think there are a lot of families who engage with us really frequently. And so my hope is that we can really give access to people who maybe don't have connection and like really bring those people into our space to create a stronger and more vibrant space for everyone to be included.
All right, well, thank you to all of our panelists, and thank you to everyone in the audience who have been actively engaging this entire time on the Jamboard. Just wait until you all see it. So I will hand it back to Barrick, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jamita, and most of all, thank you to all of the panelists today. What a great discussion. I hope everybody was able to take a look at the Jamboard. As we do with all of these sessions, that's going to stay up. So feel free to keep adding your thoughts after this meeting wraps today. And we'll send links out to everybody on today's call and those who couldn't join the call. I'm going to tee us up for our breakout discussions to really continue this conversation this amazing panel started for us. I do just want to recognize some of the folks that we have on the call so that everybody understands the power of your involvement here. We have a remarkable group of practitioners from across the state. I see teachers, principals, counselors, nurses, principals, superintendents. We also have a number of our leaders from across the state. I saw Rhonda Hannaford and Christina Monaco from the Department of Education, Kyle and Kirsten from the Department of Public Health and Environment. I recognize Chris Harms, who leads the Office of School Safety. I saw Brandon from the governor's office on here. Forgive me if I'm missing others, but we've got folks from across the state. I also want to again thank Representative Pedersen's office, who has not missed any calls and has found time for us on board in between. We also have a number of folks from the legislature, Speaker McCluskey and her team, as well as from the other side of the aisle. I know Senator Lundeen's team has been involved. On the It's a Small World, we have Liz Qualman from Colorado Mountain College's Ed Prep program, who I know is beaming with pride to see Anna on here, who was one of the graduates and completers from the CMC Ed Prep program. So that's the kind of power these conversations have. Your dialogue is being listened to by teachers who are taking your ideas into the classrooms, by classroom or by counselors and principals and superintendents looking for ideas, and by folks from just about every department of state government and our local state and federal elected officials. So that's the impact this is going to have. As we head into our breakout groups, we've got some pretty clear goals and outcomes we want to accomplish. We're hoping in each of these breakout groups, we end up surfacing a handful, and I put 3 to 5, but a handful of ideas based on the things that you heard or things that you know are going on that could be adapted or replicated exactly, whichever it is, to scale things to serve more students in your school or community. And then we really want to identify what are the things that you would need. Is it partnerships with other organizations? Is it support and technical assistance, whether from different offices of state government? In the past, we've deployed Sue's amazing team from PEBC to go out and support some of these pilots. So we want to surface that in the conversations themselves. Just some rough topics, reflections on what you just heard. Continue that. Other programs you're familiar with. Ideas for either replicating exactly, scaling, or taking those ideas. Maybe you heard something that applies great in Southwest Denver, and you're thinking about how it applies down in Salida. So ideas of how you can take these and apply them to the local context, and then what that would be needed to do. As you go into your groups, your facilitator is going to ask you to really dig into 3 questions. And again, we'll have Jamboards for these so you can capture your ideas, whether you're able to speak them or not. What did you hear today that you can imagine having a positive impact on your community? And how might you need to alter it if you do? What other unique programs are you aware of? And then that big question, what would you need to make that happen? So that's where we're going to go into our 3 breakout groups. Terry will be sending us there in about 30 seconds. We're going to spend about 25 minutes in those breakout groups. Then we're going to come back together and share out some ideas, and then we'll talk about the plans for this group for the remainder of the fall. We're going to continue digging in on actionable ideas that we can put forward for whether that's legislative action, rulemaking, support by our different friends in state government, or how we can bring you the kinds of partnerships to turn those into action. So keep your mind focused on how do we turn ideas into something we can implement to better serve our kiddos and our educators. And with that, Carrie, go ahead and throw us into our breakout groups, and we'll come back in about 25 minutes. think we've got two groups and a third one filtering back in. They are not hitting that join now. They're enjoying every last second we'll let them have. Want to thank everybody sincerely for these conversations. As with last month, I'm sure this conversation could have been twice as long, but I also know you all have very full plates at work anyway. We're going to keep these Jamboards open, and we're going to send the links not just to the group that you're in, but to all of them, so that everybody can take a look at some of the conversations happening in these different groups, and so that our colleagues who couldn't be on today's call can weigh in. But first, I'm going to ask our facilitators or those that they may designate from their group to share out some highlights on both sides of the types of programs people thought could really make a difference in their community, as well as what it would take to make things like that happen. And Evan, I'm going to go to you first, and then Jamita.
All right. Hey, thanks everyone. We just got back. We just got back here, so so apologize. I want to thank my group. We had a really great discussion. Barrick, I can pull up a couple of themes from our conversation. I kind of came in mid-sentence as you were talking. I was assuming that was what we were doing. And then if anyone from my group would like to add on here, I'll just touch on some of the highlights of what we talked about. And thanks again to everyone. We talked about a lot of important things. Just going down my list. How do we support our teacher candidates within teacher prep programs in the role of these community partnerships, what their what they hold, what their school holds, what the expectations are in there, what might we need to look at within preparation in order to better support these emerging teacher candidates to be able to hit the ground running with what they should do or expect when they're in classrooms. And then how do you pair that with providing additional supports for emerging teachers around the communities that they're serving? So residency models or other ways in which we are helping folks understand the communities that they are entering into, and what needs are, how they can help make connections, things like that. When talking about scaling either efficacious programs or looking to make those connections between something that is going well somewhere and how it might work somewhere else, we really focused on how can you bring something that might be making an impact on the Front Range, and there isn't sort of a like model like that or an infrastructure for it in a rural community, but sort of how do you make that, how do you sort of intentionally and holistically kind of make something like that work? So if you wanted to port something from the Front Range to Salida, as you said, Barrick, or to the Eastern Plains or something like that, and you need to find a way there isn't a local host that's really ready to pick that up, and you need to build that from scratch. What's the best way to do that? How do we support that at the local level or more broadly? And then the last thing I said is, we talked about the role of students in all of this, and sort of how do we continue to center their voices, bring them into the table, have them sort of, continue to inform us on sort of what is it that they would like to change, what are the harms that they're seeing to their experiences in school, and what solutions would they like to see be done differently. And Barrick, as you know, that's something that we're going to be lifting up.
Absolutely.
So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And we'll give, hopefully just a couple minutes for everybody to jump in if they'd like to, but Jamita, would love to hear what your group surfaced on, what ideas could really make an impact for kids, and some of what would be needed to make that happen.
Yeah, thank you to my group. We had a really lovely and robust conversation about just the importance of actively and authentically engaging parents. They were really reflecting on what a lot of our panelists were saying about the strength of that parent-family partnership between schools and also the larger community. So that was really a highlight. Also, the importance of youth voice and making sure that students are actively participating in these programs and also voicing the things that they truly need for these community partnerships, and also just to feel well and like they belong in schools. We also had conversations about teacher prep courses. We had Liz from Colorado Mountain College talk about how they're offering Spanish coursework to really think about the full linguistic diversity of the state of Colorado, and also about mentorships and different things like that. Luca, is there anything that I'm missing? I know my brain is kind of a little bit foggy, so feel free to add anything that I forgot.
That basically covers a lot of it. Some other main points that I noticed was like making sure that parents can easily access these like partnerships, like with transportation and being like feeling welcomed and having like the tools that they need to support students or in their kids in like a home environment as well was also really important.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both. I'm going to go briefly and then ask my co-conspirator Sue to jump in with me. I would say we heard a lot of enthusiasm for all of the different ideas with a real emphasis on the need for trauma-informed support and training. And the point that it can't just be we go do this one-off trauma-informed practice and we call that good, but that it needs to be woven into everything that we're doing, whether that's our teacher prep, our training for our counselors and nurses and admin or other classified staff, and certainly for our educators. So a need on that. We also heard about the opportunities to find the right partnerships in town and the difference that can make. When it came to the needs, I heard a couple of different things. And our group had more state folks and fewer educators, which led to some interesting conversations about program sustainability and viability. The point was raised that we need to, wherever we can, find the sustainable streams of funding rather than these one-time grants that may sunset after a year or two. So folks aren't creating a big program and then scrambling to find out how they can serve kids the next year. The point that it's not just about programs, it's the workforce and the need to keep developing the workforce. I think everybody knows we have a huge shortage of mental health experts across the state. We have schools where there is, or districts where there is one mental health expert or counselor that is splitting time between 5 and 10 and 15 schools. So the point was made, funding for programs, yes, also make sure you're building a long-term workforce and that workforce is there in all of our diverse communities from rural to urban and suburban. And then a number of points about the need to help find the partnerships. We had Rhonda who put back on her hat from being up in the Greeley schools, where they had to go outside of their area to find the right partner. And certainly there's going to be districts where the partnerships they need may not be in their backyard, or the folks at the school may not know about them. So there's maybe an opportunity to help be that connector of helping folks find the right partnerships in their backyard or down the freeway a bit. Sue, what else jumped out at you before we look to wrap this up?
Yeah, thanks. I'll go quickly. I heard a need for seamless, sustainable funding in school, out of school. I heard about the need for more protective factors for both students and teachers. The point was made several times that if these protective factors existed for youth, we would have less teacher burnout. And I strongly believe that in our 1,600 teachers we've trained at PEBC. I heard continuity of care, not putting the onus for that on the schools because they can't take one more thing. And I thought Laura was really eloquent about that. And it's parallel to what Rico Munn has taught us really about this is community violence that impacts schools because we are vulnerable. Ergo, it is the community that needs to help us solve this problem. It can't be the school alone. So I think that we're on the right track in terms of our philosophy for how we can mitigate and put protective factors in place, and we need to leverage the community better. And I think that also segues with Chris Harms, your work, and Barrick's and Jamita's on the state group, so that how do we bring those resources to the schools, maybe with a cafeteria of options, so that it's not one more thing that they have to go out and research, and then it turns out they don't have anything in their backyard. So awesome conversation, so grateful.
Thanks, Sue. And I'll just add on that point, we joked a little bit that, you know, this interagency work group has identified some 160 programs. Carrie Steele, my colleague here at Confluence, led that inventory with Chris, 160 programs just from state bodies. Rhonda and I were joking, you probably add a 0 to that if you're looking at all of these different things going on at the local level and trying to find a way to make those cataloged in a way that folks know about them, can learn from them, can access them, can replicate them, and can become a community of practice and a cohort around those. Maybe something that we've got to look at. I'm not going to be afraid to wrap us 5 minutes early. I'm going to take about 2 minutes to close us out. But before I do that, I want to open it up to the floor to see if there's any of the folks who joined us today, panelists or participants, who want to give just a quick reflection on what you heard today. Jared, jump in, please.
Just a quick word. There was a confluence, speaking of confluence, of discussion about workforce development and partnership arranging, matchmaking. The workforce people have that covered. You know, it's a good model for us to follow. They have people who will connect us with you and folks who are trying to do the same things. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel, just have to imitate it.
And that's a great point. Other reflections or thoughts for the group? Kristen from Youth Congress.
Yeah. I think one thing that I have taken away from today is that people, educators, organizations are all doing great things to support students and ensuring that there is a safe environment for students. And now the question is how can we collectively combine our efforts instead of doing things in a silo?
Great point. Sandy, I'm going to call you in. And for those who don't know Sandy, you're going to get a chance to know her at an upcoming meeting. We're going to dig into some of the remarkable peer counseling and support group work that she does. But Sandy, what's on your mind?
Thank you, Barrett. I am just so impressed. You guys, all of you with your vision for this. Thank you. I think out of all the things I've been involved with in my 31 years as an educator and now 4 years as a nonprofit working with the schools, you guys are going to make the greatest strides for this than any other group I've ever seen. So thank you. You've got the right people involved. And so thank you for your leadership and your vision.
Thank you, Sandy. And you're one of those people. Andrea.
Several times like, oh, this works great in Denver, but maybe not in rural communities. And I would like to maybe challenge that in the sense of there are lots of industry partners that you could partner with potentially. I don't know rural communities quite as well, but if anybody ever wants to sit down and chat, like I would love to do that and like think about what partners might exist in your area. So like I'm always happy to do that. My boss is always happy to do that. We just love connecting with people. So like reach out because we don't want us to just be like a one school of 26 students that get this opportunity. We really want it to be something that like every kid potentially has access to. So just put that out there.
Thank you, Andrea. On that note, I'm going to move to wrap us up. I do want to name, we've had a lot of time to hear from adults, from educators, from counselors, even from some families. We want everybody to know that we are working right now. Evan and Jamita are driving a charge to bring a lot of youth voice to this conversation. It's going to be a mix of inviting some students directly to our conversations as a group, but also making sure that everybody feels comfortable and safe sharing their ideas, which may not always be the most eager thing for them to jump on with a bunch of adults. So they're going to be doing some focus groups, some interviews, some surveys to bring those ideas to this group, as well as the opportunity for some youth to engage with us. So that's all going to be on deck this fall. And speaking of this fall, before we go into it, I want to give a special thanks to Luca. Luca, if you would wave and say hello. Luca is a policy intern who has been with Sue and Jamita and Evan and the team on loan from Princeton University over the summer. We threw her right into drinking from the fire hose. She's studying out at Princeton, where she is also, I understand, quite the athlete running distance. We thank you for the time here. We hope that what you've gotten out of this is an appreciation for the opportunities for collaborative decision-making and for the public influence on the policy process. But Luca, I'm going to give you 30 seconds if there's anything you'd like to say to this group. We just want to thank you for being here with us this summer.
Yeah, thanks for having me and everything. It's been really great to hear all the positive things that are coming out of this group. I've been through various different public-private schools here in Colorado for the past 20 years of my life. So it's really great to see that there's change that's being made. And I know all the students are really going to appreciate it.
Come home and be a part of that change in Colorado, Luca.
Maybe.
Thank you, Luca. I'm going to share screen real quick, just so everybody knows. We do have our next couple of meetings scheduled. We will get these invites and notes out to you. But we've got a meeting on September 20th from 3:30 to 5, and again on October 30th. We did not want to try to squeeze something in late August or early September as the school year is starting. So we'll take about that 6-week breather and then get back to those meetings. We will, after today's call this week, be sending out a few things. We'll send out links to all these Jamboards. Keep adding to them. Share your ideas on there. We'll also send out the link to the video of today's call if you'd like to share that with friends or colleagues who couldn't be on. We're going to be sending around some of the ideas that we've got planned for our fall meetings. If there's conversations going back to that broad scope we talked about, which is everything from effective programs to bring communities and kids and schools together, all the way to what are different responder and co-responder models to different types of violent incidents or school safety or mental wellness incidents. So we'll be talking some of those conversations. We'll also continue to hear from our state and federal leaders. But if there's conversations you want to make sure we have, or that would help you as you go into a new school year with some programs, reach out to myself, to Sue, to Carrie, Evan, or Jamita. We're happy to work this. We want this to be meaningful for everybody involved. We'll get some minutes. We'll get the Jamboard links and those next meeting invites out to everybody. But as Sue said, as the entire Confluence and PEBC team keeps saying, we're just the conveners here. This is possible because so many smart people and passionate people are giving your time. And we're truly grateful and honored to have the opportunity to facilitate these conversations with all of you. So thank you again for another great conversation. We'll have an email out to you with notes by the end of the week, and we'll look forward to seeing you in September. I hope everybody takes a moment for yourselves before you dive back into another school year. Thank you all. Enjoy the summer.
Excellent job, panel. Great job.
Bye, everyone.